we made some citrus bitters. Let's check it out. Hello and welcome back to another Beaver Brew Day. Today is one interesting one for me personally because it's something that I never thought of doing, never thought of trying. But ever since Hein dropped the comment over on the community page, Hein, thank you very much for the suggestion. He said aromatic bitters, and I know rock shandy. I've never had aromatic bitters direct, so yeah, that prompted me into doing some research, and when I do say some, I mean quite a lot of research on the subject of aromatic bitters. All of a sudden, it got very interesting. At the end of the day, for the last couple of, I would say almost a week and a half now, it's the only thing that I've been thinking about is the whole process of how the bittering agents work and all the different spices involved. And yeah, so cool. I had a couple of liters of feints that I showed on the previous video, and yeah, I decided to make some base for bitters. Now I started off by making what we have in the jar over here. So this is 90% ABV gin base. Now what I did is I ran my feints with a very basic gin recipe. So it's juniper, coriander, a little bit of ginger and some rosemary. A very basic gin recipe. So I wanted to give a little bit of extra depth and flavor to the aromatic bitters. Sorry for the car noise. Yeah, I just ran my feints at a relatively high ABV, 90%, through a infusion of the juniper and the coriander. What we were left with is this over here. So this is 180 proof or 90% ABV gin. Now it does have a nice gin juniper aroma, and I believe that extra bitter flavor at the back end of the aromatic bitters will just give it a nice flavor, because normally you use vodka. I think that the gin flavor here will just give a extra depth of flavor at the end for the aromatic bitters. One of the key things with the aromatic bitters is Chinchona bark, and I couldn't find Chinchona bark or quinine tree bark anywhere within my region. I drive around a lot, and at the end of the day I couldn't find any. So what I decided to do is research into what is called a citrus bitter, and this is where you use the rind or the peel of the lemon or orange or whatever citrus you have to bitter your bitters. That's what we're going to use. We're going to use a lemon, and we're going to use a combination of herbs. If you want to see the exact combination of herbs, I'll link it down in the description. But it's some star anise, coriander, some cinnamon, some fennel, some rosemary, some sesame seeds, some bay leaves, and some ginger. And then to bring some sweetness back, we are going to be using a overripe plum. So yeah, let's get into the process. Step number one. Instead of peeling just the zest off of your lemon, what the recipe suggests is that you cut along the side and you take the pith, whatever that's called, with it, including a nice thick slice of the actual fruit. So with your lemon cut, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it into smaller slices, so there's just a little bit more surface area for the booze to chew it up. Next up, some fresh ginger. I have a nice knob of ginger here. It's about the length of a finger and a bit thicker. What we're going to do now is just chop the ginger up into very small pieces and dunk it in there as well. Next up is the plum. So I want to play off of the lemon flavor with another bit of a sour, slightly sour but sweet fruity flavor, and that's why I'm going for the plum. So normally they add honey or some simple syrup in there, so I'm gonna go for the fruity sweetness of a plum. Okay, so next up we have the dry ingredients. As I said before, it's the mixture of some cinnamon, some allspice, some star anise. The exact quantities and stuff and the exact ratios are down in the description. But yeah, what I'm going to do now is a tip from my other passion, which is cooking, is we're going to extract as much flavor out of this dry herbs as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to dry roast our dry herbs to extract those oils and push them out into the surface. And then we're also going to add them to the jar nice and hot, and while they're still nice and hot, we're going to add our liquid in, and that is going to suck up into the herbs, extracting as much flavor as we possibly can. Okay, so now we are just going to add this into a mortar and pestle relatively quickly. All we need to do is just get all of these nice dried herbs, roasted dry herbs, into there and just give them a quick smash. So as you can see, my own personal hydrometer decided, alco proof meter or whatever, decided to no longer be 1 unit. So we're going to do the quick testing with this DIY one I made on the channel a while ago. And as you can see on those scales there, we are sitting on exactly 90%. Okay, so with all our herbs and stuff added in there now and the lid on, what we're going to do now is we are just going to bain-marie it or add it into a hot water bath for about 6 hours. Now after a couple of experiments, I found that 6 hours extracts the exact amount of bitterness that I like out of this. Yes, you can leave it at room temperature for a couple of days up until you get the bitterness that you want. But for me, 6 hours in a 60-degree water bath is more than sufficient. So how am I going to do it? Cooler box with 60-degree water, and because this is at such a high proof, it is going to strip away flavor like no one's business. So yeah, it goes into the bath and we'll see it in 6 hours. It has now been just over 7 hours since we put this into the hot water bath. So every hour and a half about, I took off some water, added some new hot boiling water to try and keep that temperature as close to 60-65 degrees as I could. And after 6 hours, what I did is I took it out, left it to get to room temperature, because remember, because that water bath is at a very high temperature, your alcohol will evaporate off if you immediately open it up. So do not open it up the moment you take it out of the water bath, or open it up to test the flavor. If you want to test the flavor every hour or so, let it cool down to room temperature, put it in the fridge and allow it to come down in temperature so you do not evaporate the alcohol off. This spent a full 6 hours at a high temperature bath, took it out, got it down to room temperature, and now we are ready to strain and drain all the botanicals off. Like I said, this is for my flavor profile. It's not necessarily for everybody else's taste, but this gives me a very good bitter quality and it is relatively quick. What we're going to do now is open this up, and we should have a beautiful fantastic herb infused and spice infused flavor coming off of this. So you get the lemon, immediately get the star anise, that licoricey flavor on the nose. So yeah, let's strain it off quickly and then give it a quick filter through one of these coffee filters, and then we will have a final tasting. Just going to give it a couple of minutes just to drain off and get as much of that flavor to come off of the botanicals as we can. Do not squeeze your bag. You are going to get some really strong astringent flavors from that. So if you strained it through a muslin cloth or a cheesecloth, do not squeeze it out. That will give you very astringent flavors, which you do not want. You want that nice natural balance of flavors. The moment you squeeze it, you are going to pull out the very bitter citrusy flavors from the lemon peel, and then as well as from the spices. So with enough drained off as I would like, what we're going to do now is we are just going to give it one more filter, and we're going to pass it through a standard coffee slash oil slash something filter. This is going to be a nice and slow process, so do not rush it. We just want this to filter all the way through and remove any of the big solid parts that are left over. Before we do that, we just want to do a quick test, and from the research I've done, how you're supposed to test your bitters is you put it on the back side of your hand, and then you have to lick it with the full length of your tongue to get all the different flavors from sweet to bitter to salty. You get the star anise first, you get the lemon, you get that bitter from the lemon zest, then you get the fennel, a little bit of cinnamon. I would have liked a little bit more cinnamon flavor, and then right at the end that bay leaf comes through. Having tasted only a few bitters in my life, and majority of the time in a cocktail, I do believe this gives me that flavor profile that we were after. So yeah, let's filter it and get it in the bottle. But thank you very much for the suggestion. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is something that I would have never ever thought of trying, and after tasting this, I think it's something that I'll definitely experiment with. Anybody got a hookup for some, once again mispronunciation, Chinchona Bark or Chinchona Bark that we can pull some quinine out of to get the original bitters recipe? Please put it down in the description or in the comments so I can get my hands on some proper quinine or Chinchona bark, and we can do the proper bitters that everybody knows. Very impressed with the bitters we got out of this. So once again, thank you very much for the suggestion, and as always, thank you very much for sticking around to the end. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and have a lucky day.